Hi friends, and welcome into my PvP tier list for Lost Ark. Following on from my PvE tier list, where a lot of you have said it's been super helpful, you've also then requested a PvP one, so here it is. If you don't know who I am, welcome to my channel. My name is Bentley Gaming. I've been playing the game for over 2,000 hours now, with a good bit of experience in PvP, and I also have my own podcast with big names such as Lino, Syvo, T-Party Percy, and Kanema. But this tier list will be based around ranked 3v3 team deathmatch solo queue, and as was stated in one of the recent patch notes, just before the new PvP continent came out in Korea, Smilegate actually said that they are aware that their PvP is not balanced to the state where they want. But first off, I'll show you the classes that are coming out at launch, and then after that I'll add on the other classes that are coming later on. Bear in mind that balance patches do come in for PvP, not too regularly, but things do change, so just make sure to take all tier lists with a pinch of salt. And a big shout out to the other content creators that have allowed me to use some of their footage. All links for them will be down below. But if you want to know my thoughts, here's my list. Starting off with the Deathblade, for me this one goes into S tier. It's a class that has a very good toolkit in PvP, with lots of super armors and also lingering skills that make it quite hard to deal with. On top of that, it's quite beginner friendly and also has great mobility. So an excellent combination of mobility, damage, and super armors. This makes it a really good dueling class. It does suffer a little bit from long cooldowns, but it's not too bad. It's also about middle of the road in terms of tankiness, so it's not too squishy, and I feel like this is going to be one of the better classes when it comes to climbing the ranked solo queue ladder. When it comes to Shadowhunter, this one I'm putting in A. A very flashy class that can transform into a demon. The Shadowhunter is a hybrid class utilizing both range and melee, with quick burst damage, which flows really well, and because of its range, it's also really good at peeling for your team, making it a good team player. It's a very positional dependent class and suffers a little bit from a lack of super armors. However, when you transform, you're completely stagger immune, which is a really big bonus, so you just need to watch out for being knocked up and hard CC'd. But it's a very solid class that's going to do very well with a lot of people. When it comes to coefficiency, it's about middle of the road, so it's not too squishy. Next up with Artillerist, this one I'm going to be putting into B tier. This class has one of the strongest combos in the game that can literally take off about 70% of some of the characters' healths in one combo. However, in the higher tiers in PvP, it starts to fall off because it's a bit predictable. One of the best catches you get starts off your Gatling gun skill, trying to stagger an enemy, rolling in and doing your nuke combo. However, because you can counter this by just holding down your auto attack, this gives you an opportunity to get away, therefore stopping the whole wombo combo. While you can still do very good in the arena with this and you can get catches in other ways, against ranged characters you're probably going to struggle, even though it is quite good at anti-melee. However, I just feel that overall it can be outplayed, so that's why I put it down into B tier. Looking at its coefficiency, it's actually about in the middle of tankiness. However, due to the fact that it has two on-demand shields, one in normal form and the second in turret mode, you can survive quite a bit. When it comes to Deadeye, this one's going in A tier. It's a very complicated class that has a fantastic kit, but because of the weapon swaps that makes it very hard to play. You've got good range with your sniper rifle skills, as well as amazing combos going in close and also using your shotgun. Mastering this class takes a lot of time and good muscle memory, but once you do it, you can have amazing results. The outplay potential is absolutely massive. However, it suffers from being one of the squishiest classes in the game, so if you get caught, then you're in for a world of pain. If you put the time in to learn it, you can have a great time. However, I think the Gunslinger has a slight advantage, so let's go into that. So for her, I'm going to put her into S tier. This is because she has an extra mobility skill compared to Deadeye, which is fantastic for getting catches, but also she has a better sniper rifle skill with her zero ray. On top of that, I think her ultimate is better. The bombard, it just hits a lot faster, firing off one big bullet that's pretty much instant and has a good AoE size. So for me, that's why I rate her higher, but she has a lot of the similarities. She's got extreme mobility, mega high damage potential and outplay potential, as well as having good range with a sniper and being able to go in close as well with her pistols and shotgun. All in all, an extremely hard class to play, but I feel she'll be one of the best classes to climb the ranked solo queue ladder, as her potential to carry games is massive. Just try not to get caught too much, because obviously she's extremely squishy. When it comes to Sharpshooter, this class I'm going to be putting into B tier. With Sharpshooter, you have invisibility, and I feel like early on in the game that this is going to do very well because people won't realize and you'll get caught out by it. However, it has long cooldowns on its big skills, and it's also a bit crit dependent. If you land a crit on your snipe skill, you can do whacks of damage, but if you don't, then it's only okay, and then you have to wait for another one. However, the invisibility at the higher rankings, people tend to outplay it because it becomes a bit of a novelty. And yes, you can play without the invisibility like is on screen right now, which gives you an option for more damaging skills. However, the class doesn't feel massively fluid, the mobility is slightly clunky, and while it does have a fantastic hard CC with its Claymore skill, again, people at higher tiers can see that coming and generally tend to dash through it. It's just below middle in terms of its tankiness, so if you get caught, you can be bursted down pretty quick as well. And all of this combined in my experience of the class as well, this is why I've put it into B tier. When it comes to Bard, this is a no-brainer, it's an S tier. Having a Bard on your team just makes the game feel completely different. The shields, the damage reduction, the CC immunity, and just generally all the utility that this class brings to a party is absolutely incredible. As well as all of that, it has a great deal of super armors, which is fantastic, a really good CC skill, and a single skill that does a ton of damage. And the ultimate is just brilliant, bringing a huge shield to the party as well. And when you look at the coefficiency, it's right down the bottom, being the squishiest class in the game. However, all of this utility and shields that it brings actually makes it quite tanky. All in all, having a good Bard on your team can really turn the tide of battle, and some well-timed shielding and CC immunity can completely change the fight. So Bard is a no-brainer for S tier. Next up, we have Sorceress, which is a place summoner at launch. This is a truly ranged character that acts as more of a team enabler. While you can get off some good damage combos yourself, the catches you get can really set up for your team. And using your field of vision and the blind spots correctly, you can actually play Sorceress really safe from super far away. She also has some good self-peel with skills like reverse gravity. However, if these get baited out, then she can be quite susceptible to a lot of the melee rushdown characters in the game. She has virtually no super armors depending on what build you go, and if you look at her coefficiency, she's a very squishy class, and so once you get caught out, you're going to be taking tons of damage. And once you've built up some gauge, you have a really nice teleport that you can use twice when it's full, so her mobility can be really good. You've just got to make sure that you get in the right position because you don't want to teleport into the enemy team. And with all this in mind, that's why I've put her at A. Next up, we have Scrapper, and this one I'm going to be putting in B tier as well. The thing with Scrapper is it has to work very hard to get off its damage. A lot of the time you have to be knocking an enemy down, tracking them again after they've rolled, and then knock them down again to be able to have time to get off your burst windows. It's a class that I feel in PvP could use with a bit of an update, but that doesn't mean you can't do well with it. It's quite forgiving because it's quite tanky. Taking a look at its coefficiency, it's actually the third tankiest class in the game. On top of that, it has some good mobility and also some good super armors as well, and its kit makes it quite a good jeweler, but it just doesn't feel as good as, for example, a Blade. You can be easily interrupted when you're using skills like Fist of Destruction, which is when you're punching down on the floor, and this just doesn't put Scrapper in such a good position in PvP. With all of this in mind, that's why I've put Scrapper in B tier. When it comes to Soulfist, this one's actually going up into S tier. When it comes to her kit, she has really good mobility with a triple dash. She has access to a really good ranged hard CC skill, some outstanding burst damage when she's in her third power-up form. And while she goes through these big damage moments when you're in stage 3 of her identity, and then she hits like a wet noodle when you're in stage 0, this actually gives you a bit of time to come back and actually peel with your team when your identity is on cooldown. On top of this, her Inicky Discharge actually gives your team a really nice defensive buff, so she can also act as a bit of a pseudo support in PvP, and all of this combined just gives her a really good tool set to do really well, peel for your team, do some really good damage. You've got defensive buffs, great mobility, and great range. And if we look at her coefficiency, she's above average, and then with that defensive team utility can actually make you surprisingly tanky, so she's a little bit more forgiving. For all of these reasons, that's why I've put her in S tier. When it comes to Striker, this one's actually going down into the C tier. It really suffers from a lack of super armors, and the one that you do have, while it is quite decent, you do have to charge up 2 of your identity orbs to be able to use it. a very mobile class with an in and out attack playstyle, but its AoEs and hitboxes are quite small, so you have to be quite precise, and you really have to pick your windows carefully, otherwise if you jump in, you're just going to get knocked around and absolutely smacked down. And while it is still possible to get to Grandmaster on a class like Striker, it's just not going to be as easy for a lot of people as picking one of the higher tier classes. Being a fighter, it's above average with its tankiness, making it slightly more forgiving. However, overall, with its kit and its quite complicated in and out fast-paced reaction-based playstyle, all of this is why I've put it into C tier. When it comes down to the Wardancer, this one is going into the B tier. Often referred to as a less aggressive version of the Striker, what the Wardancer brings on top of what a Striker would is team utility. Not only does she have a damage reduction buff for herself, but she can also buff her teammates' movement speed, attack speed, and further damage reduction as well, which if timed properly can actually add quite a bit to a fight. The downsides being a massive lack of super armors, and she also runs into mana issues quite regularly. I feel like she could use a bit of a buff at the moment. However, again, that doesn't mean you can't have good matches with her, because you really can. But again, similar thing to the Striker, you're looking for opportunities to jump in, get some quick combos off and jump out, wait for your cooldown to do all over again. And in terms of her coefficiency, she's quite high up, and because of her damage reduction buffs as well, she's actually quite forgiving, so can absorb quite a bit of damage in PvP too. So overall, because of her team utility, this is why I rate her higher than Striker. So for the Berserker, this one I'm going to be putting in A tier. It's a class that has super high damage but is a bit slow and clunky in PvP. It also suffers from extremely high cooldowns and also mana issues, so you have to be really picky with your engages. This turns the Berserker into an opportunist class, and when you do get those engages right, the damage is so high it really makes the class shine. On top of that, you've got a good amount of super armors, especially on your high damage skills, so once you get going you can't easily be interrupted. I don't think the Berserker is overly complicated to play, and because of its high downtime from the cooldowns, you actually learn quite a bit in PvP, just because you can't do anything for a while, so you're going to be watching. So for Berserker, it's really important to actually land those high damage skills for your performance, but you don't have to land too many to actually be top of the leaderboard. It's also got a good bit of mobility, and having a look at the coefficiency, it's number 4 in terms of tankiness. At really high end play, it can suffer a bit from being a bit predictable and telegraphed, but because it can capitalize so well on opportunities, this is why Berserker is an A tier. Gunlancer in PvP, this one I'm going to be putting in A tier. It's a very solid class that actually acts as a pseudo support. It can give your team a shield. Its chain hook and bash is very annoying and disruptive, and that's what it excels at. Healing for your team and acting as a kind of wall. Interrupting key combo times from your enemies is going to be very important for your success, as the Gunlancer is very slow and sluggish and can suffer against being outplayed by more mobile and agile classes. But with its team shield and its own self shield, as well as having the best coefficiency in the game, it's a really hard class to take down, and this allows the Gunlancer to continually be disruptive. As well as this, it actually has some really good burst damage with its burst cannon, and I just feel like it adds quite a bit to a team, and all these reasons combined is why I put it in A tier. Now for the last class we have out at EU and NA launch, this is the Paladin, and the Paladin goes straight into S tier. Not only does the Paladin have a surprising amount of burst damage in the game, being a very aggressive style support, the damage reduction and shields that it brings to the party is absolutely magnificent. Similar to that mentioned with the Bard earlier, having a Paladin on your team, it just makes a match feel completely different. Popping up a shield and then using Ruffian's Word on an ally that's just about to get hit by an ultimate can basically negate the entire thing, and never underestimate how important damage reduction is in a PvP match. And on top of all of this, it's actually not a very complicated class to play because of how its toolkit works. However, it does suffer from a lack of super armors, only having one in its main meta build, so you'll need to spend a bit of time getting used to when you should and shouldn't go in, otherwise you'll be on the floor a lot. But apart from that, it's very strong, and looking at its coefficiency, it's actually really high up there, but again, because of its damage reduction and shields, it is way tankier. So for all of these reasons, that's why it's in S tier. So these are all the classes that are out at launch for EU and NA. The other ones I'll go through in a moment, but if you just wanted to see that, here it is. Remember, if you like the video so far, give it a like, but let's crack on with the next set. When it comes to Reaper, that one's going into C tier. Unfortunately with Reaper, not only is it basically the squishiest class in the game, it doesn't bring a lot to the team, and its damage isn't really that high either. The outplay potential on a Reaper is absolutely massive and its mobility is incredible, but honestly it just doesn't bring enough or do enough damage to warrant being any higher than C tier, and if you get caught you can say bye to so much of your health it's not even funny. Hopefully at some point it'll get a buff to be a bit better, but honestly at the moment it's just not that great. I'm really hoping at some point it will receive some love, but the skill cap for it is so high that I think a lot of people will struggle with this when trying to climb the rank ladder. So that's why I'll keep it in C tier. When it comes to the Scouter, this one goes into S tier. The performance on Russian and Korean servers for Scouter is always very good. It's a class that, while being very difficult to play because of the fact you have to micromanage your drone's positioning as well as your own, once you get some practice in, it's very rewarding. It does offer a very safe playstyle, being able to stay behind your drone and do a lot of damage without having to heavily commit. However, the class does suffer from a lack of super armors though, but makes up for this a little bit when you go into Iron Man mode when you transform. Just like the Shadowhunter, it gives you full stagger immunity, but this also gives you a nice shield and some really good range. Looking at its coefficiency, it's near the bottom, so if you do get caught out, expect to take a lot of damage, but the transformation shield definitely does help. With all of this in mind and just a fantastic kit, this is why I'm keeping Scouter in S tier. Now for Arcana, I was considering putting this in A tier, but I've decided to put it into B. It can bring quite a lot to a team in terms of some of its catches that you can do, because it has some really big AoE CCs. However, it's a bit of a gambler class, and the inconsistencies that come from the cards you get from your identity, I just couldn't bring myself to put it into A. If you get a good game with some cards that you need, then you can really burst down some targets very fast and do extreme damage, but you can also have the other side and you just don't get the cards you want, and this is why it's a bit of a gambler. It does have some nice mobility, and it's also a bit of a hybrid, as a lot of its main burst damage skills are in melee range, which can make it a bit harder to play. And if we look at its coefficiency, it's just under the average, so you can take quite a bit of damage too when you get caught. So with all of this combined, that's why I've decided to leave Arcana in B. The next class is Summoner, and this one's going into A tier. This class has the potential to be the highest damaging class in the game, but for that you really need a team that knows how to peel and support and play around you. And then if you get double if not triple catches with your Phoenix skill, for example, your damage is going to go through the roof. As well as that, you've got your pets, which actually do some good CC and are very annoying to play against in the arena. The main problems though with Summoner is the fact that you're very squishy and you have an extreme lack of mobility and also super armors. Looking at the coefficiency, we're below average. You do have access to some self-peel, which can be really nice, and if you get caught out, then you can really get punished, but allowed to free cast and stay behind your team, as Summoner is absolutely formidable in the arena. It's not too difficult to play in terms of getting your damage off, but learning how to play it well to dodge the melee rushdown classes, that is key for your success. And with all of this in mind, that's why I've put Summoner in A tier. Next up we have Lancemaster, and this without a doubt goes into S tier. This is a class that seemingly has it all: very high mobility, really good AoEs for nice catches, really good damage, lots of skills and low cooldown so you can spam them. It also has some sneaky good range, as well as some super armors, and even a counter ability that puts up a shield. Even looking at the coefficiencies, it's above average. So my honest opinion with Lancemaster is it's going to perform very well across the board for a lot of players. It's just the fact that it has a weapon swap and extra skills can make it a little bit more difficult to play, but obviously only having 2 weapons to swap between is not as hard as like a Gunslinger. And for all of these reasons, that's why I'm putting Lancemaster as S tier. The last class we have is Destroyer, and this one I'm going to put in A tier. It's a ridiculously tanky class, especially when you put on your Endure Pain. You take about 90% reduced damage for about 8 seconds, as well as having a shield and full super armor for the entire time. And not only that, most of his other skills also have super armor, so it's incredibly hard to stop. It's just a bit sluggish and a bit slow and can be outplayed by a lot of the faster characters. And that's the only reason I'm not putting it into S tier, because its AoEs are absolutely cracked. They are massive. It's also a really good class at doing like 2v1s, and also some nice mobility skills, albeit they do have a bit of a wind-up time, which is part of the problem making it a bit clunky. When you look at the coefficiency, it's number 2, but honestly when it has Endure Pain on, that's basically invincibility mode for 8 seconds. It's crazy. So a very strong class with some massive AoEs and good defensive stats. It's just the fact that it can be outplayed that doesn't get it any higher. However, a very strong class overall, and this is why I have it in A tier. Alright guys, so that's my PvP tier list and the reasons why. Remember, if you have any more questions, you can catch me live at twitch.tv/BentleyGamingTV and let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Just remember to keep it nice. Constructive comments are always welcome, but negative comments will either be ignored or deleted. And if you like the video, give it a like and consider subscribing. We also have our community Discord with over 1,600 members now that's full of PvP builds and also advice. If you want to get involved in that, then hit the link down below. And until the next one guys, I hope you at least learned something, and I also hope you have a very nice day. See you now.